Evil men could destroy. And they've done a lot of it throughout history, and still are. The World Trade Center is, a recent example. But they can't build it. They live in their rat holes in the desert. They can't build it. They could blow it up, but they can't build it. That takes rational thinkers to do that, not faith-based Dark Age savages. Therefore, any victory, you put it in quotes, any victory gained by the Tooheys is Pyrrhic. In every case, the triumph, again in quotes, the triumph of such individuals leads inexorably to the destruction of human life on Earth, never to its flourishing. For example, the totalitarian state that Toohey seeks to hatch, whether of a communist or fascist variety, will suppress the independent mind, the fountainhead of all progress, and thereby lead only to brutality, regression, and destitution, which is exactly what communism or fascism have ever done in practice. All right. So, yeah, Robert?
You mentioned earlier two kinds of power, to create and to destroy, and Wynand seems to have both of those. Can you draw a contrast between Wynand's power and Toohey's, and how that comes out in Toohey's speech to him at the end?
The contrast between Wynand's power-seeking and Toohey's power-seeking is the question. Wynand's a piker compared to Toohey as a power-seeker. He's an amateur, and Toohey recognizes that and says as much. So does Dominique. What does Dominique say? Gail, she says, you're like a tank. You go out in front of the armies and you give blows and you take them. It's like an honest, fair fight. But Toohey's like corrosive gas. He's poison gas. He's eating out your lungs. And very often you can't see it or smell it. It just eats out your lungs. Wynand has too much independence in his soul. As you pointed out, he's a creator. He creates this empire. He understands power in terms of having a business empire and then using wealth to maybe dictate terms to U.S. senators or whatever to vote for the legislation that he wants passed. But Wynand does not seek life and death power over society the way Toohey does. He's not a totalitarian. He's not a collectivist. He's neither a communist nor a fascist. And nor does Wynand seek a whole army of followers as a cult leader. Wynand wants money. Wynand wants to run things around here. Wynand wants to overcome this belief of his youth that the independent thinkers, the people with new ideas, don't have any power in society. That's what he wants. He wants to carve out. This is the tragedy one. He wants to carve out a role for the independent thinker in human life, but he mistakenly thinks that the independent thinker has to gain power over others, thereby undercutting his own independence. Attempts to live out that contradiction, which destroys him. Toohey simply is an utter dependency who wants complete life and death power over the entire society. If you want to, by analogy, Wynand's like a bad sinus infection, whereas Toohey is terminal cancer. There's no comparison here. Wynand is a very limited power seeker. His power seeking is undercut by his independence, by his ability to create an empire, by his own creative ability. Whereas Toohey has no creative ability. He wants to establish a totalitarian state for a reason. He wants life and death power over an entire society. Whereas if you scratch Wynand deeply enough, he's a supporter of mixed economy, semi-capitalist system, whereas he wants no part of fascism or communism, and he'd probably defend the United States to the death against it. Whereas Toohey's attempting to impose a fascist or communist type dictatorship. So they're very Wynand's an amateur compared to Toohey, and Toohey understands that and says so. All right, I think we now have enough data to take a step back and get an essentialized understanding of the Fountainhead in terms of including a deeper understanding of its theme. Now we can ask the questions. So I think you really want to understand a literary work, you need to ask some questions of it. First of all, who's the main character? That is, whose goals drive the conflict? whose values initiate, sustain, and carry to successful climax the main value quest of the story. Now, clearly, that's Howard Roark in The Fountainhead. I mean, he's the one who designs independently, doesn't let himself be influenced by others, he defies his professors, he stands he's the one, even after being expelled, he goes to Cameron. After Cameron closes his office, he goes out on his own, etc., etc. Roark's value quest drives the conflict in this story. In fact, I think of this in my own mind as the Roark principle of literary analysis, because I think this is the paradigm example in the history of literature of a hero utterly dominating the conflict of the story. Roark initiates the conflict, he sustains it, he carries to successful climax. He never doubts that he's going to be successful on his own terms. Like Frank Sinatra, he does it my way. Right? It's he's going to do this on his own terms, not on society's terms. Now, second question we ask: well, what does he want? Again, in the universe of The Fountainhead, it's very clear. Roark seeks to build in accordance with his own standards. Well, who or what stands in his way? Part of what makes The Fountainhead great is pretty much everybody. There's a handful of people who support it. That handful grows over the course of the story, but at the beginning, virtually everybody. Notice that every possible type of cognitive and psychological dependency stands in his way. The traditionalist, the conformist, the collectivist, and then there's the mixed cases of independence and dependence who also stand in his way. For example, the Wynand papers that Henry Cameron warns him against, the triumph of overbearing vulgarity. Well, they stand in his way too. And then even the independent people who are honestly mistaken, including his own lover, Dominique Francon, who joins forces with Toohey, attempting to wreck Roark's career. When Ayn Rand said in the Art of Fiction that what you want to do as a novelist is make it as difficult as you possibly can for your hero, set up every hand against him. Oh, well, she did that to poor Howard Roark in The Fountainhead, except poor Howard Roark barely noticed it because he's not poor Howard Roark, he's rich Howard Roark. So basically stands alone against almost an entire society. So the story is about Howard Roark's struggle to build on his own terms in accordance with his revolutionary principles in a society that opposes him in every conceivable form. See, now we can extract, do this inductively, now we can, by picking out the concretes from the story, now we can extract what Ayn Rand terms the plot theme. In the Romantic Manifesto, Ayn Rand identified what she calls the plot theme, which is the essence of the story's plot, the essence of its action, the essence of its conflict, as distinct from the theme, which is the core of its abstract meaning. So the plot theme in The Fountainhead is the struggle of a young architect against against society and his own lover to create revolutionary buildings. I'll repeat that. The plot theme of The Fountainhead is the struggle of a young architect against society and his own lover to create revolutionary buildings. Now, if you ask, well, what's the story about? Well, that's what it's about. That's the essence of the plot, the story, the conflict. That's the what. But then you want to go deeper. You ask the question, you ask the so what. What does it all mean? What does it add up to? What's its abstract meaning or its theme? Now, in order to identify a theme of a novel, you need to go broader than its plot theme. You need to take the plot theme, the essence of the story's conflict, and then integrate it to the other key elements in the universe of the story. So in this case, we could ask the question, how does Roark's struggle integrate with Dominique Francon's struggle to overcome her mistaken malevolent universe view? How does Roark's struggle integrate with Gail Wynand's agonized attempt to live out the contradiction of independence versus dependence? How does it integrate with Ellsworth Toohey's attempt to crush independent men, establish a communist dictatorship, etc.? What's it all mean? What's it all add up to? What's the theme? Now notice that the theme of the novel captures, let me put it this way, every element of the plot is integrated under Ayn Rand's theme. It's part of the theme. Roark's struggle is to create on his own terms, to do it independently. Dominique's struggle is to recognize that the independent men will succeed in the world, that they will not be crushed by the second-handers, by the dependencies. Gail Wynand's struggle is an attempt to live out a contradiction, impossible contradiction between independence and dependence. Ellsworth Toohey's struggle is the attempt of the second-handers of the cognitive and psychological dependence to enslave the independent men. Every part of this story is perfectly integrated around its theme, around one principle, which Ayn Rand stated brilliantly. What's the Fountainhead about thematically? Ayn Rand says individualism versus collectivism. Not in politics, but in men's souls. You can't state a theme any better than that. Individualism versus collectivism. Not in politics, but in men's souls. To be an individualist of the soul is to recognize that your mind and reality. You think. Think means to focus on reality. It doesn't mean to scheme and scam and take over other people's lives. It means to focus on reality, identify truths, and guide your life by it. That's what individualism of the soul means. It means independent cognitive functioning. Collectivism of the soul means society comes before reality. Society comes before nature. The truth is social. You give up your mind to follow others. This is what the Fountainhead is all about. You could state the theme in various forms. It's independent cognitive functioning versus dependent. It's the first-handers versus the second-handers. It's the attempt to seek survival by conquering nature versus the attempt seeking survival by conquering those who conquer nature. These are just variations on the theme. Now, here's a question. Notice the theme is individualism versus collectivism in men's souls. It's independence versus dependence in cognitive functioning. How do they use their minds? Do they use their minds? Or do they surrender their minds to society? Notice the theme is very abstract. And so you can raise the question here, what's the author's attitude towards her own theme? Does she support the individualists of the soul, the independent thinkers? Does she support the collectivists of the soul, the dependencies? Is she like Shakespeare? Is she just hold up a mirror to life and takes no sides, just lets events play out as they will? The theme itself will not tell us that. The theme itself is just individualism versus collectivism. It's very broad. But the entire universe of the Fountainhead will clearly tell us what Ayn Rand's attitude is towards her own theme. In my mind, I think of this as a book's meaning. And by the term meaning, by meaning, what I'm saying is the meaning of a book in general is a single statement condensing an author's stand regarding his own theme. And the meaning of the Fountainhead is the importance of independent functioning in men's life and the destruction wrought by second-handedness. I repeat that. This is my own formulation, so you can take it for what you think it's worth. But I would argue the meaning of the Fountainhead is the importance of independent functioning in man's life and the destruction wrought by second-handedness. So I think we now have an overview of what the Fountainhead is all about, what the essence of the plot is, its plot theme, what the theme is, stated in various forms, and what the meaning is, what Ayn Rand's attitude is regarding her own theme. Now, before we move on to style, so I want to say a few things on Ayn Rand's literary style. Does anybody have any questions on what we've discussed so far? We've focused on the main characters in the story. We've seen the essence of the plot or the conflict as Roark's struggle to succeed on his own terms. We've identified the theme. I want to spend at least a little time on style.